So a total of 19 athletes scheduled to contest this 12 and a half laps. And we are underway. And just the team aspect of this event and the fact that it was allowed to be contested at all, confined to the schools and universities within 40 miles of Penn. We have 18 here today, and that definitely played out in the men's 5,000 with Penn and Villanova doing some teamwork to get to their final placings. But the competitors in this women's 5K, Brandon.
Ariana Gardizzi is in hip 1. You see her kind of in the middle of the pack, a sophomore from Penn. She comes into today's meet with a 16:29.5 PR from the 2020 indoor season. That gives her the top seed. Danielle Orie from Penn is wearing hip 2. She has a 16:18 personal best, but that's from 2018. Michelle Joyce from Temple also in the mix, wearing hip 3. Naomi Hayes from Penn, hip 4. Elizabeth Vaughn from Villanova, a freshman, hip 5. Lauren Baines and Joey Shetty, both from Penn, are hips 6 and 7. Then a mix from Temple, Haverford, St. Joe's, and Penn in the back end of our pack, as we already see them kind of falling into groups. It's Gardizzi and Meyer and Joyce in that front pack.
And Ariana Gardizzi ran for North Penn High School here in eastern Pennsylvania. I saw her a number of times at the state high school meet, and she was a 2:25 800 runner, sub 5 in the high school metric mile. So brought some very good credentials here to Penn, as you see her there wearing number 1, sitting just off the pace of her leader. Lots of Penn colors out there. We'll see how the teamwork comes together here during this 12 and a half laps of the women's 5,000.
Yeah, 3 of the top 4 in Penn uniforms are ready. And Meyer of the group, she's wearing hip 13. She's probably out there for pacing duties, as we discussed in the men's race. And then it will come down to Gardizzi, hip 1, Joyce, hip 3, and then Orie just a few steps back at the edge of your screen for Penn. And Vaughn, the freshman from Villanova, hanging on a few steps behind in the top 5. That's going to be our group once Meyer steps off the track, maybe a few laps into this race.
Similar to what played out in the men's race. We were down to a group of 5. This one's a little more loosely gathered together than the men's group of 5 was. So you do have that lead trio. You see them right there on screen. It is the Penn teammates along with Michelle Joyce. So Meyer and Gardizzi. And the third member of that Penn group, Danielle Orie, trying to work her way up.
For Orie, I mentioned her personal best came in this event back in 2018. You know, so many of these athletes, we almost take it for granted how often they're able to run a personal best, especially in this season that's a little bit different and coming off of a year where they didn't compete at all outdoors. You forget, though, that, you know, with a lot of athletes, a lot of different things can happen that can get in the way. You need good conditions. You need to have the right race in a lot of ways. But also the biggest threat is probably injury. And Orie, a few seasons didn't compete. You know, that can kind of rattle things, and it can be a long time to work back to where you once were, and looking for that strong performance today to maybe break through and return and regain some of that old form.
The first kilometer for our leader, 3:17. And when it comes to leader, currently in Division I East Regional, Hannah Steelman from NC State down at the highly competitive and high-level performance-filled Virginia Challenge, went 15:30.87, so that's the #1 time on the East Coast. Quite a performance there. And a total
that's just under 5-minute mile pace.
And a total of 18 have run sub-16 so far in the Eastern Regional. There is our lead group. We are at 4. So the third Penn runner was able to close the gap. That's Danielle Orie. So she is at the tail end of this lead group. And we'll see just how soon we lose one of those runners and go down to 3 in the lead group.
hanging around 80 seconds per lap right now in that top group. So that puts you right around that 16:30, 16:40 5K pace. It's 5:20 per mile pace. So like we're talking about with the 5K earlier and needing some of that speed, if you're thinking about running 16:40 and you got to run 5:20s 3 times, you probably need to be able to run a 5 flat mile, which is kind of the big barrier and mark of true excellence, at least at the high school level. You got to come in and be able to do that and then extend upon it to hang in this kind of 5K scenario.
And speaking of mile, Maggie Meyer led through a 5:17 opening 1,600 meters, and then she stepped to the outside, and our lead group is down to 3. And you see Temple's Michelle Joyce currently in front.
Joyce 2 weeks ago ran 16:35 at the Temple Invitational. She also has a 10K under her belt, a 35:09 at the Raleigh Relays at the end of March.
So the 2K split, which will tell just how these 3 athletes were able to go on their own, will be reached at the end of the back straightaway. Again, Joyce, Gardisi, and Orie, 1, 2, 3, and they have quite a decent patch of unused real estate between themselves and the number 4 runner. And that is Elizabeth Vaughn from Villanova. She is a freshman.
2,000 meters in, 3K
2,000, under 640. So 2K, just about 638.
That's still Vaughn of Villanova in 4th.
Anybody looked a little more comfortable than anybody else in that lead trio, Brandon?
Well, I think Joyce, for having done a lot of the work until just now with Gardisi taking the lead, I think Joyce looks really comfortable within herself. Gardisi has a little bit more of a left to right, just seems naturally in her running form, but seems comfortable as well. And if you're Orie, she was off the group a little bit at the very beginning of the race and then got onto it. You wonder if she can kind of even out and hang on to this group.
That last lap, 81.
Still looks comfortable though, and the longest stride of the 3 runners.
5.5 laps in the books. They'll hit 1.5 miles at the end of the back straightaway, 2,400 meters down. This is a 12.5 lap distance. The women's 5,000 closing out the 2021 Philly Mets. The Philadelphia Metropolitan Collegiate Invitational, 18 Division 1, 2, and 3 teams from 40 miles in and around the University of Pennsylvania gathered today at historic Franklin Field on Penn Relays weekend. And as Brandon said a number of hours ago, hopefully we'll be back to a normal, regular Penn Relays multi-day weekend next year.
Absolutely.
There's our lead trio: Ariana Gardisi, Michelle Joyce, Danielle Orie. Single file through 2,600 meters. So this is where both mind and body go into a different phase. You're in the second half of the race. You already have, now you just have counting down the laps. All right, we just have 6 to go. Count them off one at a time, maybe straightaway at a time, maybe half lap at a time.
Yeah, I was about to say, in my experience, it's often 200 meters at a time. And I think both in terms of the miles and the Ks. So 1K is a stepping stone. 1,200 meters is a stepping stone. 1,600 meters, 2K, 3K, 3,200 meters. Each one you're inching a little bit closer. And as you continue to go, if you're really in that zone, in that flow, the laps can just click off and feel smooth and comfortable and hard, but within yourself. If it's a tougher day, if you're really trying to just bear down and hang in there, it can be tough to just latch onto that pace, and you're really pushing up on that threshold to where lactic acid fills your legs and your breathing gets heavier. That's what they might be pushing up on against right now, but you just have to remind yourself, I'm into that final sprint sooner than I know it. I'm at about 10 minutes now, I have maybe 4 or 5 more minutes of really struggling through this and hanging on to the pace before it becomes a race to the finish. And that last minute, that last 300 meters goes by way faster than it seems like it will when you're at 3,000 meters into the race.
9:55.8 for Ariana Gardizzi at 3,000. They went out in 3:17, so they haven't deviated much from that early pace. And speaking of pace or times in mind, currently Michelle Joyce from Temple, the senior, number 79 in the East region. Number 80, Ariana Gardizzi. They went back-to-back at Temple, 16:35 and 16:38. And speak of the devil, there goes Michelle Joyce into the lead. Not teammates, but sharing some of the workload. Again, maybe she felt that the pace was dropping a little.
That's Joyce of Temple now taking over the lead.
And it's important if you're Gardizzi, it's fine to let Joyce take the lead. You just want to stay in that pack. You just want to stay on that group. You don't necessarily need to pass her right now, but what can sometimes happen if you're leading so many laps, it can be a little demoralizing when somebody goes by you, and it can kind of snowball from there. It looks like she's doing a nice job of just staying locked in, staying in that second spot, having her teammate Orie pushing behind her, and they'll look to work up and work together to make a move here over this last 1,600 meters. But Joyce looks really smooth and really strong, and this is the most separation we've seen in a few laps now.
And you mentioned earlier, a lap or two ago, about whether Danielle Orie could maintain the contact at the tail end of this trio, and she has.
She's there, yep.
She looks good. And again, under 4 laps remaining.
Just ran 80 seconds, 80.5 for Joyce, 81 for Gardizzi and Orie. So, a step or two off of what they had been, which you would expect at this point in the race.
And there goes Danielle Orie moving up into the number 2 spot, passing her teammate, Ariana Gardizzi.
That's what you got to do. She was in a good spot in 3, but if 2's going to fall off a little bit and lose that separation, you have to be ready to move up and keep your eyes on 1 and Joyce, and that's exactly what she's doing, working around the athletes that are lapping now and keeping that connection. She doesn't have to pass her yet, but you got to stay connected at this point.
And speaking of the lap traffic, they're going to run into that just a little bit more, as Gardizzi just went around one of the back markers in this field as she chases her teammate and Michelle Joyce.
Your leader's still Joyce, but Orie right behind her.
3 laps remaining.
That last lap for Joyce.
And at the end of the back straightaway, it will be 4,000 meters down, 1K to go. It is Joyce and Orie, the senior and junior.
And they're right on Joy's season's best pace of 16:35. For Orie, that would be a season's best if they finish in that area. They're right on that 80-second 400 pace.
4,000 meters. That's still Joyce, Orie, Gardizzi.
13:17 at 4K.
2.5 laps to go. Joyce
So
and
again,
Orie.
if they add another 3:17 or so, that's about a 16:34, 16:35 for the full distance.
Let's cheer them on.
And we'll see how much incentive or motivation or maybe distraction these lap runners will add to this fight between first and second. Joyce and Orie. You talked about the placement of coaches. They are definitely out there right along the rail, telling them, giving them motivation. 2 laps remaining. Another 80-second lead lap for Michelle Joyce. Danielle Orie in second, duplicated that. Ariana Gardizzi has now dropped about 25 meters behind in third. And there goes Danielle Joyce driving for home from 650 meters out.
Sometimes you sense that that person in front of you is just losing the pace by a step or two, and something clicks that it's the time to go. But Joyce has not let up yet. She's going to stay in this fight until that final lap.
And that might not have been the last move, but that was a move.
Yes.
By Danielle Orie, excuse me.
Exactly.
This 5,000 meter race
Again,
is looking
more
like it's gonna
traffic
come down
ahead
to
of
the last
them
400 meters.
as they go out into lane 2.
Orie
Danielle
continues to
Orie.
lead.
The next time by the bell. Our leaders headed right toward your living room. Orie and Joyce, bell lap, 15-16.
PR territory for Joyce. Orie would really have to step on it for a PR, but certainly a season's best is in reach.
A 79-second next to last lap. How fast can they churn this final 400?
They both looked really comfortable coming back through that last straightaway.
You saw in the men's race, Justin Eiler went from 69 to 62 on the last lap, and his final 150 was off the charts. Michelle Joyce on the outside. There is her move with 200 and change to go.
Is Orie going with?
It's Joyce, Orie, Gardesi.
Joyce now up by 5. Starting to pull away 150 meters right underneath the clock here at Franklin Field. Michelle Joyce.
Keep an eye on that clock. As mentioned, Joyce
running to victory.
16:35.
And she will be under her season best time, well under, just over 16:30. It is Michelle Joyce from Temple with the victory. Danielle Orie in second.
16:31.61.
Ariana Gardesi third. They're the top 2 times. Gardesi coming in 16:42, but Michelle Joyce, the senior, 16:31.61 for the victory.
Strong running by Joyce. Didn't flinch when Orie took that lead in the second to last lap. Just stayed with it, made her move on the final back straightaway, and turns in a 4-second PR as a result.
And the rest of our 5,000 meter field for women completing their 12.5 laps.